Hi, Professor O'Donoghue here. Today we are going to talk about conditional operators in C programming. Okay, so the first thing I want you to think about are the type of operators that you use in just regular math or in algebra. So when we think about those type of operators, there are addition, right? Subtraction, multiplication, right? And division. Well, in C, there are also operators, and there are four main types that we use. Arithmetic, which are the same ones like you use in math, relational operators, logical operators, and bitwise operators. So first, let's talk about the arithmetic operators. So these are the ones, most of them you should be familiar with. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Now, modulus, that's probably a new one for you. The modulus is the remainder of a division problem. So if you think back to when you learn how to divide, say like in the third grade, you would do something like this. If you want to divide 7 by 3, you would say, all right, how many times does 3 go into 7? 2 times, right? 2 times 3 is 6. You would have a remainder of 1, right? This is the modulus. It's the remainder of a division problem, okay? So this is the whole part. This is the remainder. So that's what modulus is. You have decrement, which means to subtract 1. So if you had x equals is going to be assigned x minus 1. That means you subtract 1 from your value of x, and then you assign that new value to x. Increment means to add 1. So if you had x and you wanted to add 1 to x and then assign that value to x, that would be your increment operator. All right, so let's look at a program real quick and show how this works in a program. Okay, so we pulled up the program on Code Blocks. Here it is. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. Okay. The first thing that's going on is that you're going to declare 3 integers. You're going to assign the value of 5 to x. You're going to assign the value of 2 to y. And you're going to assign the value of x divided by y to z. So the first possible problem you should see is that these variables have been assigned the type integer. And if you're doing a division problem, more than likely you don't want to assign the type as integer. You would prefer to make it a float or a double so that it would be more precise. But because we are using the modulus operator, we're going to assign an integer because that is how we are going to verify that the operator is working the way we want it to. Okay, so the first thing that the program is going to do is print out a statement saying that x divided by y is going to be equal to, and we're using the operation x divided by y. We're using this calculation as the value for our integer, okay? And what I'm trying to show here is that you can use the operation here, or you could just use another variable in which you have assigned the operation to be the value of that variable. You could do either one. The next portion of the program, I'm using the modulus operator, okay? And then finally, I'm just going to print the result of x divided by y and x modulus y. So let's run it and see what we get. So what do we get? We get 5 divided by 2 is 2. And that's true because we use an integer. And remember, for integers, any decimal part of your division of your value is truncated. Okay, so 5 divided by 2 is really 2 with a remainder of 1, but we get 2. All right. We get 2 regardless of whether we use the x divided by y calculation or whether we use a variable. Okay, now we're down to the next part. This is the modulus. 5 modulus 2 is 1. That's true, because 5 divided by 2 is 2 with a remainder of 1, okay? And it doesn't matter whether we use the calculation or a variable, we get the same thing. 5 modulus 2 is 1. All right, now we get to the third part of our program where 2 has been assigned to x and 4 has been assigned to y. And we say 2 divided by 4 is 0. That's true, because 2 divided by 4 is is a decimal, right? It's 0.5, but we have assigned the type to be an integer, so our answer would be a 0, but our modulus would be 2, right? So this works perfectly. All right, next let's look at how the increment and decrement operators work. So first we'll look at increment. So basically, incrementing is the same thing as writing this statement. X is equal to x plus 1. It's the same thing as assigning x plus 1 to x. That's what increment is. There are two different ways you can do it. You can put the plus signs in front of the variable, and that's called a prefix increment, or you could put the plus signs after the variable, and that's called a postfix increment. And just as you would probably guess, prefix comes before, postfix comes after. You can do the same thing with decrement. Decrementing is saying that x is equal to x minus 1. It's 1 less than what it was before, okay? And you can either subtract the 1 before you assign the value, or you could subtract the 1 after you assign the value, okay? So I already said a prefix comes before. Think about English. Think about pre, right? It means before. So that's what a prefix is. And so basically what this means is that if you are assigning, so remember, whenever you're using one equal symbol, what it means is that what's on the right side of that symbol is assigned to the variable that's on the left hand side of that symbol. So it's not the logical equal, it's an assignment. So keep that in mind. So what we're saying is that the value of x is going to change before the value is assigned to z. So the value of x is going to change before the value is assigned to b. So let's look at an example. We have assigned 4 to y, okay? And then we want to decrement y. So we start out with y as a value of 4, okay? Because that's what we assigned to it. All right, but then before we assign this value to p, this is a prefix. So that means we change the value of y first before we assign it to p. So it was 4, we decremented, so that means we subtract 1. So now the value of 3 is going to be assigned to p. And the new value of y is 3. Let's look at a postfix. Okay, it's going to be just the opposite. Postfix means the value of x will change after the value is assigned to z. So if you notice, the plus signs come after the variable, or the negative signs come after the value. And then what's on this side of the equal symbol is going to be, this value is going to be assigned to z after. Well, it's going to be assigned to z first, and then you're going to add 1 after it has been assigned to z. All right, let's look at an example. We started out y is equal to 4. All right. Now, we want to assign y to p, and it has a decrement. But the decrement comes after we do the assignment. So the value of p is going to be 4. But then we're going to decrement, and the new value of y on the next instruction that is executed will be 3. Okay, so that's how a postfix and a prefix work. Alrighty, what's our next question? I love questions. That's how you learn, by asking questions. What are relational operators? Basically, what you're trying to answer is, what relationship do the operands have with one another? And remember, the operands are the values that you're operating on. So if you had 3 plus 5, that means the operands would be 3 and 5, and plus would be the operator. All right? So you're looking at the relationship between the operands when you look at relational operators. When you look at logical operators, which is a type of relational operator, you are going to use these for decision making. And when you evaluate the expression, it's going to return either a true or a false, either a 1 or a 0 value, because in logic there is only true and false. There is only 1 and 0. Okay? Now this is what you have to know though about C programming. If you have any value other than 0, it is considered true. So if you evaluate an expression, say for example, x minus 2, and we say x is equal to 3, 3 minus 2 is going to be 1, right? So that's going to be true, all right? If we made it 1, and we say 1 minus 2 is negative 1, that is still going to be true, because the expression doesn't equal 0, right? 1 minus 2 is actually equal to negative 1, right? And so this would still be considered a true expression. The way that you would make it false is to assign x equals 2 and then have x minus 2, right? So then you would have 2 minus 2, which is equal to 0. So this expression would evaluate to 0, which would be false. Okay? So logical operations of expressions, you have to think about, because sometimes it's kind of different than what you would think in terms of just regular arithmetic expressions. All right, so let's look at the operators that we have. We have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equal. Now, notice that equal logically or relationally means that you will have 2 equal symbols in the expression, like I did up here. Okay, so if you have x equals 7, you're asking a question. What's the relationship between x and 7? Are they equal? If it's yes, if x is equal to 7, then this expression evaluates to a true or a 1. If x is equal to some value other than 7, so up here we had said it was 2, then 2 is not equal to 7, so this would evaluate to false or 0. Now, if we put 1 equal symbol, that means assign the value that's on the right hand side to the variable on the left hand side. Totally different. This one means assign this value to this variable. This up here means, are they equal to one another logically? You're asking a question. Are they equal to one another? And then we have not equal to. So we will stop right here for part 1, and then we will continue on for part 2.